We made it to Friday. Good morning, Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop with you each and every weekday morning here for the Center Square and Illinois in Focus. Catch the live stream on YouTube. Catch the rebroadcast if you're not with us live, or get the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus and you'll find it. A couple of things we're going to tackle involve the health care of children and the well-being of children. Two events yesterday that are really putting the focus on that. So we're going to tackle both. One, Governor J.B. Pritzker signing a measure that ultimately has mental health screenings for public school students. Parents can opt out of it, but school districts cannot. So parents are going to have to be on their game if they don't want their children to undergo annual mental health screenings. So we'll hear actually both sides of that argument here in just a bit, but also a pretty alarming story. Actually, it's just an ongoing kind of pattern of sorts, and that is the well-being of children who are on the radar of Illinois' Child Welfare Agency, the Department of Children and Family Services. And just a string of audit reports about not following proper protocol and reporting the danger to children, and even just horrible stories of young people losing their lives despite being on DCFS's radar. So we'll tackle that here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. A couple of things that coming up. You've got today, Governor J.B. Pritzker. He's going to be at Wrigley Field at 9:30 this morning. No media availability for Q&A, but apparently he's going to be on home plate and having some kind of announcement at 9:30 today. So we may see what that's all about when we're back together on Monday. But Governor J.B. Pritzker had a couple of events yesterday. We'll touch on those today here. But also today, later on this morning, Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul, California's Attorney General Rob Bonta, and also Connecticut's Attorney General William Tong. They're all going to be holding a virtual news conference about what they say is a multi-state legal action. So what's that going to entail? Is it going to be concerning the Second Amendment, for instance? Maybe has something to do with the tax stamp on suppressors. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they announce today as well. So those are just a couple of things we're going to be watching this Friday as we head into the weekend. But you had President Joe Biden in town last night. Just to touch on that just briefly here, the former president addressing the Bar Association's annual gala, and obviously being the former president, somebody who garners a lot of attention wherever he is. He made some comments. Here is just some of that as C-SPAN covered it.
Fair, impartial, respecting the rule of law, and upholding the Constitution. I wish I could say the same for the executive branch, which seems doing its best to dismantle the Constitution. Oh, I'm being deadly earnest, man.
And again, that's Biden last night in Chicago, again taking shots at President Donald Trump and the Trump administration. Brandon Johnson was also there last night. Here is a little.
I'll close with this. President Biden at a commencement speak at Howard University a couple of years ago said that the greatest threat to our democracy is white supremacy. He is right. But I also know that the greatest challenge that white supremacy has ever faced is the unyielding spirit of black liberation.
So Johnson, again, at that event as well last night. Figured I'd just give you a couple of clips from that just to start it off this morning. But stay with us. Two segments, both dealing with children and their well-being. either mental health screenings that are going to now be available starting in 2027 for children in public schools, and what about DCFS and the handling of children on their radar, and some just alarming stories of kids that lose their lives. So we'll start with that next here. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and wake up with us for Illinois in Focus Daily.
And shared responsibility, all of us in the state of Illinois, to ensure that they have everything they need to live happy and healthy lives. And it's our moral obligation to give them all that we have toward that goal so that they can grow up happy, productive, healthy, and people that the state of Illinois can be proud of.
I don't know any of us that would have our jobs after 6 years of failures. And this isn't just failures, this is fatal mismanagement, right? So yeah, the buck does stop with him. He is overseeing these things, and this isn't, an us versus them. This is something we can all be working together.
It's just a couple of clips there of Governor J.B. Pritzker at the One Family Illinois awards that he received last night, and talking about foster care and the importance of it, and how he's put more money into DCFS. But you've got State Representative Nicole Laha, Republican from Homer Glen, criticizing Pritzker's handling of DCFS. All right, it's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. You can wake up with us each and every weekday morning here with the Center Square. Get the headlines either in your inbox, go to thecentersquare.com, or you can wake up with us here. Join the live chat each and every weekday morning at 8 o'clock. We go live for Illinois in Focus Daily. Also don't want to, neglect to remind you that we have Illinois in Focus Weekend Edition as well. Jim Talamonte and myself, we talk about a whole host of stories, all of this and more. So you can get that podcast as well for your weekend updates. All right, so let's get to this. Yesterday, Republicans held a news conference to highlight what they say is, again, the continued frustration they have with DCFS and the seeming regular stream of stories of young people on the radar of the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services, but still dying of questionable circumstances. Drowning, drug overdose for kids, beating, and a variety of other things, neglect, and so on. I mean, it seems every 6 months there's just a horrifying story. The most recent one being an 18-year-old girl in foster care, despite being on DCFS's radar, losing her life. Here's Republican State Representative Tom Weber yesterday talking about just the list of recent names there are and how tragic scenarios they succumb to.
Zara's Walker, Tamsin Miracle Sawyer, Sophia Faye Davis. These are just a few of the names of children who DCFS has failed in recent years and who could still be alive today. And now we have the deeply troubling case of Mackenzie family. Clearly, we need to do more than just throw money at this problem, as the governor likes to do. You could put turds on a sandwich and put as much seasoning on it as you want, but at the end of the day, it's still a crap sandwich. This is what we have with DCFS, a system that doesn't work. Children at risk of abuse are the very definition of our most vulnerable, yet they are being failed in the worst possible way. Protecting vulnerable children is not and should not be a partisan issue. Protecting them is our most basic responsibility as a state. I've spoken with legislators on both sides of the aisle who agree. Yet the majority party and Governor Pritzker have consistently rejected Republican efforts to reform this broken agency. The Auditor General's report released this week showed that 29 of 34 failures are repeat findings. That's 85% repeat failures. That is a problem that comes with failed leadership. Governor Pritzker, you've had 6 years, yet the failures continue, and children are dying. It's time to work across the aisle for new solutions.
So again, Weber talking about how Republicans have these ideas that they've brought forward, but the majority party Democrats just don't seem willing to entertain these types of suggested reforms. And, the reforms include allowing for independent investigations to be launched and a whole host of other reforms that Republicans say just are not advancing at all at the State House. Governor J.B. Pritzker was asked earlier in the week where the buck stops. Here's his response.
Listen, the buck stops with me about state government. There's no doubt about it. I have responsibility for the agencies under my executive authority. I would remind you, and I know this gets lost often by opponents, they don't want to talk about the fact that it takes some time to turn things around when things aren't working. And I have to say, particularly a child welfare agency. I know that people say, well, gee, you've been in office for 6 years. How come this hasn't been entirely fixed? How come we haven't fixed the pension problem? How come we haven't, made everything easy in the state of Illinois? Some of these things are built into a system that has failed for 25, sometimes longer years. And we have worked diligently, particularly at the Department of Children and Family Services. Before me, the governors, what they would do is when there was a problem, when there's a death, there's a big story somewhere that was a negative story about what DCFS had done, they would use the leader of DCFS as a scapegoat and fire them and then blame them. And that's not the governor's fault, that's that person's fault, and then bring somebody else in. In fact, for the 14 years before I became governor, I think there were 13 or 14 different directors of the department. That leads to instability, and you're never going to solve anything. So I've tried to bring stability. We've got a terrific director there now. She's on it. I think people behind me and people, even Republicans, I think would acknowledge there have been a lot of improvements at DCFS. It is never acceptable when there is a death of a young person. But it's a crime that gets committed by someone, not DCFS, by someone in the process, someone in whose care that child is. Often it is that person or some failure along the way. It's typically not DCFS committing a crime. It is most typically a problem somewhere in the system. And so we've been rooting out those problems steadily over the last 6.5 years.
And the governor he responded to a different question about this earlier this week, but Republican State Representative Nicole Laha from Homer Glen, she said that the governor's had plenty of time here, and the circumstances around this case are alarming about the lapse of judgment of DCFS leadership, and I guess where the buck stops, Governor J.B. Pritzker.
Her foster mother and grandmother now face charges of first-degree murder and aggravated battery. But behind this tragedy lies a deeper failure. Mackenzie's caseworker, Curtavia White, had a documented history of violent crime and harassment. Yet DCFS still hired her as a child welfare specialist in 2023 at $75,000 a year. That's more than an oversight. That's straight up negligence. While she was not the caseworker at the time of Mackenzie's death, this still raises very serious concerns about the department's hiring practices and the governor's oversight. When legislators and advocates raise concerns, Governor Pritzker brushed it off as a right-wing talking point. Let me be perfectly clear. This is a talking point for everyone. We're talking about children's lives, and it should matter to everyone.
Again, the governor did say that it was a right-wing talking point when he was asked about the case earlier this week.
Let me begin by saying, it's a horrible tragedy, and a crime appears seriously to have been committed here. It's a kind of a right-wing talking point to say that we're withholding information. We are required when local law enforcement, and I'm talking specifically now about the state's attorney's office there, when we're asked by the prosecutors not to reveal, not to interfere, we do that. We have to do that. And obviously we're seeking information from the prosecutors because they are doing a lot of investigation. And we have continued to do whatever investigation we're allowed to do, but we are prohibited when local law enforcement, local state's attorneys tell us, local courts tell us
we can't. So we have every interest in finding out what went wrong here. We know only a few things. I think they've all been made public, the things that we know. And we try to act on those immediately, whatever it is that we know. For example, as you know, this was an outside agency that's been contracted by DCFS to monitor that particular child. So obviously questions about that outside agency have been pursued. So that's the answer to your question, but happy to take your follow-on.
So again, he was asked about where the buck stops, and he says the buck stops with him, but it takes time to turn the agency around. He's been in office since 2019, and a lot of money's been going to DCFS, a lot of money. We've had now, I think he's on his second DCFS director, maybe a third. But again, 6 years. He says it takes some time to turn this around because the stuff's been baked in over decades. Here's Tom Weber again saying that that's just a cop-out.
No one wants oversight, and no one seems to want change. And all we're asking for is to protect children. Governor Pritzker has had 6 years, and he has done nothing but throw money at the problem.
And Nicole LaHaas saying that the governor's had plenty of time and there needs to be a focus on getting things right.
I don't know any of us that would have our jobs after 6 years of failures. And this isn't just failures, this is fatal mismanagement, right? So yeah, the buck does stop with him. He is overseeing these things. You know, and this isn't, you know, an us versus them. This is something we can all be working together.
Well, we see more conversation about this. It seems to pop up every about 6 months or so when another tragic story is splashed in the headlines. And then we get news conferences about the need for reform and the governor answering questions about, yes, the buck stops with him, but how does that ultimately happen? I guess elections, you got 2026 coming up. We'll see. All right, it's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell each and every weekday morning. Get the headlines in your inbox at thecentersquare.com. You can get the Illinois page. Just go to states, and then you click newsletter, and you can sign up for the Illinois headlines. But also, you can wake up with us here with Illinois in Focus Daily each and every weekday morning. Governor J.B. Pritzker holding up legislation he signed yesterday that allows for universal mental health screenings in K-12 schools here in the state of Illinois. I'm Greg Bishop. It is Illinois in Focus Daily, where we wake you up each and every weekday morning with a review of things that are impacting you. And, of course, Illinois schools, they have 800 plus school districts. I think we've got the most number of school districts in the country, but obviously your property tax is driven a lot by the schools. If you look at your property tax bill, most of it's going to your local school district, and the state is giving $350 million more each year to K-12 schools. There was a long committee hearing yesterday, and maybe we talk about it on Monday, but it was Chicago Public Schools going to an Illinois House committee talking about how much more money they need and how they need no more program funding cuts, and they just need more money. So obviously K-12 education takes a lot of funding, but there's also a lot of criticism. Some saying that the K-12 school system in Illinois, especially in some areas, needs a lot of improvements, that the bounce back from COVID has not happened as quick, and a lot of young people are not advancing as they should. So a lot of criticism for schools. But one thing that is obviously a major point of focus for some Democrats at the State House was ensuring that children have the proper mental health supports. Now, Republicans do also acknowledge the importance of focusing on mental health, but they differ on how to go about that, especially when dealing with public schools. So a measure ultimately came out of the Illinois State House during spring session that would bring about mental health checks at schools. If you go to thecentersquare.com, you'll see mental health screening may have long-term impacts in Illinois, according to a legislator. So Senate Bill 1560, as Jim Talamonte reports, it essentially allows for mental health screenings at public schools starting in 2027. Here's Governor J.B. Pritzker talking a bit about it yesterday.
We know how transformational these screenings can be for kids at this age.
They provide early identification and intervention so that those who are struggling get the help that they need as soon as possible. They provide early identification and intervention so that those who are struggling get the help that they need as soon as possible. They improve academic and social outcomes. They help us break down the stigma that too often is a barrier to seeking help.
And the state's superintendent of education, Tony Sanders, he also talked about how he sees this as being a huge benefit to have mental health screenings for Illinois public school students every year.
As the governor said, like vision screening, hearing screening, and dental screening, mental health screenings will help us provide timely and appropriate interventions. The earlier we identify the need, the better support we can provide that to students to help them thrive in school and in life.
Now, not everybody voted for this. People have legitimate concerns. One of those who had concerns, State Representative Stephen Reich, he was part of a different news conference with the Republicans critical of DCFS, and we did that in the previous segment. But he was asked at the tail end of that news conference about this bill that the governor was preparing to sign yesterday. Measure, again, to have mental health screenings. Again, mental health screenings that are not mandated. Parents can opt out, but school districts cannot opt out. And it's only for public schools. But regardless, Reich said that it could have some unintended consequences down the road in that child's life.
And frankly speaking, universal mental health screenings is not going to, it sounds great. It's something, oh my goodness, we do need mental health care in this state, and that is a crying need. It's from birth to death almost. But the fact is that universal mental health screenings are going to get us nothing except possibly finding reasons for denial of coverage of insurance, or running afoul of all sorts of requirements for confidentiality. We end up having kids who are screened as potential with some sort of potential mental issue. You don't know where that's going to lead, and I don't think this bill put us in any position to say that once we have universal mental health screening, what's going to be the result? Where are we going to go with that? What's going to happen when kids become adults and they look back and they say, oh, this guy had a certain amount of had indications of such and such. I'm not going to say what. No, that is a slippery slope, and I just could not support that.
So again, Reich wasn't the only one not supporting that. A whole host of people pushing back against it, ultimately raising questions. Again, Reich saying that it could have long-term implications. Maybe a kid is misdiagnosed with a certain type of mental condition, but then he grows out of it by the time he's 18, 19 years old, but somehow this is going to be there in the background, or maybe there's a mental health provider that's not up to snuff and causes some serious damage for a whole host of people and their young developing years in a school. Maybe you get some questions that the mental health experts are asking these kids. Just looking at the live chat, a couple of questions arose here. For instance, do your parents own a gun? Is that an appropriate question for a youth to be asked by a mental health provider? Are there going to be things that are off limits? Are there going to be things that they're going to be required to ask? Another thing is, a listener on the live chat says, would these mental health screenings be used to possibly prevent someone from owning firearms down the road? I have a friend from high school who was brilliant, and they wanted to go to West Point when they were young, and they had some issues with, mental health early on, or at least they were given a certain type of medication to deal with it as a child, but somehow that caught up, and even though this person was brilliant, wasn't able to advance in that, and they ended up going into a similar field and excelling there, obviously. But it's interesting how a child's history, even in the mental health space, could impact their future down the road. Maybe again misdiagnosis, maybe again a fostering to a certain type of mentality that's not necessarily healthy. I mean, there's a whole host of concerns there, obviously, but the governor signing this yesterday, and it's got some people raising some red flags. The governor yesterday also was asked about the Evanston School District here, the school district where he signed this. Apparently, the U.S. Department of Education is investigating Chutes Middle School in Evanston because of what could be how the school handles diversity, equity, and inclusion, for instance. And you've got these types of investigations being requested by parents in some cases, or the DOJ is just coming in on their own. But Pritzker says the DOJ investigations are, quote, BS.
I can't speak to the investigation that's going on specifically here, but I can speak to more broadly the investigations that have been initiated by the DOJ. And that is that many of them are just plain BS. And they're seeking to attack places where they think there are people who are vulnerable. Because if they can make you fearful, maybe they can make other people fearful.
And he says that's a tactic that's as old as time. But we'll see how that comes out, if there are findings in this investigation and so on. All right, it's Illinois in Focus Daily with the Center Square. I'm Greg Bishop. Get more headlines at thecentersquare.com. And wake up with us each and every weekday morning here for more Illinois in Focus Daily. That's all I got for you on this Friday morning. Greatly appreciate you guys being here and being part of the program. Next week, we've got the Illinois State Fair that's starting up. And if you get to thecentersquare.com, you can actually see some updates here about what the State Fair's got to offer. They're going to have a craft brew tasting contest. But there's also going to be enhanced security. So go check that out at thecentersquare.com. I'm going to be at the fair quite a bit. You got political days with the governor and Republicans having separate days, and they're going to be featuring some keynote speakers on both ends. And we'll be covering all of that for you. But obviously, agriculture is huge at the state fair. I can't believe next week's already the state fair. So it starts Thursday next week. And then the following week's when all the political stuff happens. So get ready for it. I'm Greg Bishop. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. Don't forget to get the weekend edition. Myself and Jim Talamonte talking about a whole host of stories. But we'll be back at it live here with the Center Square and Illinois in Focus Daily. Have a great weekend, guys.